Hey everybody, it's Cam and Tim, and I'm going to show you how to create multiple multicam setups in DaVinci Resolve and stuff. There are a number of different use cases for multicam setups, especially if you're doing interview sequences with multiple cameras, podcasts, music videos with multiple cameras. You get the gist. And there are multiple ways to set them up efficiently, and I'm going to show you a couple of those ways to do that. This one is a bit longer than most tutorial videos on this topic, but hopefully it'll tackle some of the issues a lot of people face when they set up multicam setups. So the topics we're going to look at are setting up keyboard shortcuts, creating a multicam clip with the sync bin, creating a multicam clip in a timeline, or how to create it if the timeline's already been created. We're also going to go over some common issues, like if there's multiple takes for a single audio file, like if you only have one music track but you have 5 takes of a music video. We're also going to go over mixed frame rates in case one or more of the cameras was accidentally sent to the wrong frame rate, and some audio channel issues. So the first thing we're going to look at up here is keyboard shortcuts. So if we search, the first thing we're going to search are multicam cut and switch. So if I pull these down here, you're going to see that this is what I have mine set to accordingly. You can pause and make sure yours is set there as well. Next one we're going to search for is lock tracks. And this is because oftentimes when you use a sync bin, you are automatically locking each track. So we're just going to have these 2 keyboard shortcuts right here to unlock all audio and video very easily. Next one we're going to search for is nudge, if I can spell. And I'm going to show you these right here with 1 frame right, 1 frame left, multi-frame, which is usually 5 frames. These will be able to nudge your clips back and forth, single or 5 frames. The next one we're going to search for is select all clips under playhead. This is really useful if you have your playhead in a single position. You want to select all your clips under that playhead. This is how you do that. You can also go to this trim tab where you can see all the select functions. If you want to be able to select gaps or select a specific edit point, change the type of edit point, you can do that there. Next one we're going to search for is based on waveform. Just make sure you don't go to this media pool one. Pull this up and we're going to auto align clips based on waveform. So make sure you go to this one. We're going to set it to Alt S. You can set it to whatever you like, as is the same with every single one of these keyboard shortcuts. You can set it to what you like. These are just my personal preference. So the first thing we're going to do is open up these interview folders, and I can just toggle down this interview tab and highlight all of these. And now we can see all of the clips that are in each of those folders. And you'll notice that I have this camera number tab right here set. If we right click, we can manually toggle that on. And the reason I'm doing this is because in the sync bin, if we set these numbers accordingly, they will actually layer them on those tracks respectively. This is especially useful if you have multiple takes of a long interview and your camera has to stop and restart after a certain period of time. That's why we set those. And so we're going to go over to the cut page. And if you go into the cut page and you don't see all of these clips, like for example, if I go up here and press this and I just go into one of these folders, you only see one of these folders. Just make sure you click on the parent folder, drop this down, and then highlight all of your folders there respectively, and then they will all show up. So we're going to Control A to highlight them all, hit the sync clips button, and that's going to pull up your sync bin for you to be able to sync all your clips. And as you can see, each one of them are set to their tracks. So we're going to go ahead and sync by audio waveform. And that's going to automatically sync all of our clips, and we're going to scroll through them just to make sure that everything's synced. And we're going to save sync. And you're going to see these icons pop up on the clips. And then we're also going to turn on our proxies. If you want to learn more about proxy media and how it's used, check out this video. I think there's like a tab up here that shows, I can't remember where it shows up. It's up there somewhere. Just click on it if you want to learn more about proxy media and how it actually works. But I've already generated mine, so I'm going to toggle them on, and that way I can skim through them really quickly. And if I go to the sync bin, we can see that our clips have indeed been synced. And if you have a speed editor, this is a really good tool to use. We're not going to touch that much today. What we're actually going to do is go back over to our media pool, because what that save sync has actually created is a multicam clip. So if we can't find it immediately, you can just highlight all of the folders that you used, because it won't show up here in the cut page. But if you go to the media pool and you highlight all of your folders that you just had, you'll easily find it. So we can just click and drag it over to our master folder here. And then that way we have an easy place to find it. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Interview Multi. And then what we can do with this is we can right click and we can create a new timeline. And if we open this timeline up, we have our multicam sequence here in the timeline. So now if we click on here and we toggle our multicam and we skim through, we can see each of our cameras simultaneously throughout the entirety of the timeline. And then we can use our keyboard shortcuts. If we wanted to start cutting through cameras, we can just press our 1, 2, and 3 keys. And now we're making cuts on the clips while switching the cameras simultaneously. You can even play this back and do the cuts as you need. If we go to timeline and turn on selection follows playhead, this is also going to help for our switch camera function. So we just showed the cut, but let's say we wanted to go back and just easily skim over a clip and then press 1 or 2 and see if there's a better camera that we wanted to use in that scenario. We can just keep pressing our switch camera keys. And then that way we don't make additional cuts, but because we have the selection follows playhead tool, we can just hover the timeline bar over a clip, press our switch keys, and we can switch the camera without making a new cut. We also want to make sure we have stacked timelines enabled. So if we click on this icon over here and then hit this icon under timeline view options, we can then see however many timeline tabs we want. So if we go up to our multicam clip, right click and select open in timeline, we can now see our multicam sequence. And this is what I was referring to earlier with our sync bin. Every time it creates a multicam sequence, it'll automatically lock all of our tracks. So if we use that keyboard shortcut here, boom, now we've unlocked all of our tracks inside of a multicam clip itself. It doesn't matter if we use video or audio, it'll unlock or lock all of them because the tracks inside of a multicam clip are married in a different way than on a regular timeline. Now, if we go back to the timeline, we kind of notice a problem almost immediately, and that's with the audio. The problem with the audio is it's getting cut to each camera as well, and we don't necessarily want that. We want to be able to have one audio track for the whole interview or whole whatever we're using it for. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all of this, and I'm going to make sure that this linked selection is disabled so that it's grayed out. And I'm going to highlight this clip here, and I'm going to press 4 because I know that's the audio track for my multicam sequence that I'm referencing. You can also right click and hit switch multicam clip angle to the whatever audio channel you're doing is. It just happens to be 4 for me. And now we have our audio set to the correct channel. However, if we start scrubbing through again, we turn our multicam on and we start scrubbing and we start making cuts, it switches back to the other audio that we didn't want. And there's 2 ways to circumvent this. The first thing we can do is highlight both clips and then right click and select link clips, or we can use the keyboard shortcut that is assigned to. For me, it's Control L. And then that way I can do these cuts seamlessly and there's no issue. The second way to do it is to right click that audio clip and then go to flatten multicam clip, and then either one of these toggles will work. It doesn't matter. And then we can go ahead and keep cutting accordingly. So both of those work, it just depends on what your preference is and what will work better for you. I tend to go with the first option because if I'm cutting through an interview, I want to be able to cut both tracks accordingly, but you can always relink them and then ripple edit your way through anyways. Really quick before we move on to the music video setup, if you're running a single screen of Resolve, when it comes to having both viewers up, for some reason, by default, when you have the inspector window open, this window, the multicam window, just disappears and it's only this timeline window. So if we go up to workspace and we go to active panel selection and hit source viewer, or we press P, then it brings up both viewers, and then we can bring up our media pool as well and then scrunch everything together. I don't know why that bug is there for some reason, but by default, it only shows one viewer if the inspector window is open. So we're going to go ahead and delete these clips and we're going to move on to the music video setup. So I'm going to highlight all of our things here. And as you can see, there are multiple different types of cameras. And this is an instance where if I scroll over to the right here, we have different frame rates. So one of them shot at 60 and the others shot at 24. We also have an audio channel discrepancy. So we have 6 audio channels here and then the rest have 2. So if I highlight all of these and I go to the cut page and I go to the sync bin and try to sync it all, it's going to give me an error message saying auto sync failed. These clips can't find anything. Oh no, what do we do? Let's cancel out of that. Let's go over to the media pool and what can we do? So if I highlight one of these clips that has the 6 audio channels, I can actually go over to the source viewer here and hit audio track. Now we can see this is what all 6 channels are showing, and we can see for some reason only audio channel 2 has any audio. So what I'm going to do is highlight these, go to clip attribute, right click and select clip attribute. Why can't I say clip attributes? Right click, hit clip attributes, and we can see that we have a bunch of audio here that we don't need. We're just going to delete all but one and change that to channel 2 because that's the one that our audio is on. We're going to hit OK. Now we can see our audio channel has been singled out. We'll go back to the cut page. And when we go to the sync clips bin, hit sync. Now everything is synced. So we'll save it. And then we'll wait for it to say, hey, we've got the sync done. And we've got it. Here's the multicam sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the master again. We're going to rename it to music video multi. Now I'm going to open in timeline first because there's one thing I might have forgotten, and that's not all the clips were necessarily meant to be played through the whole music video. So if I scroll up here, I see there's a couple clips that are just kind of in the middle, and these were because I knew we did pickup shots after we shot the full things. So these I don't actually want in the multicam sequence because they're just pickups that I can put in later. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just redo because we only did 3 actual takes. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We're going to go back into the media pool, and I'm only going to select the first 3 of each camera instance here. Come on, click, thank you. And we're going to worry about this frame rate a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the audio as well. Go back to the cut page. Hit the sync bin, or sync clips rather. Hit sync, syncs it all, save sync. I go back to the edit page and we've got our clip, and let's go ahead and rename it. And I'm going to open in timeline, make sure everything's set. There was an instance where we messed up in the middle of a take, so it's really 2.5 takes, but you know. I'm going to go ahead and hit this plus, and that's going to add an empty timeline. So I can just click and drag this multicam clip into the timeline, and that just creates a new timeline in and of itself. Wonderful. So when I turn on this multicam feature, you'll notice it's not showing all of our cameras. Well, if we go down to this bottom right point, we can actually see all of our cameras here. We don't actually need to see the audio. And we only have 9 cameras. So I can just go ahead and change this to 3x3. And now we see all 9 of our cameras. Who would want to edit 9 cameras at once? I don't know, but there's people that do. And then I just want to make sure I get my audio set up. So we're going to go ahead and right click here and select our audio file, which is our Logic Pro X. And I'm going to go ahead and just flatten it so it's out of our way. Now these 3 cameras are just 3 different takes of the same thing. But there's 2 different ways that we can set this up. We can either sync each of them by camera or sync each of them by take. We'll go by camera first, and this has less of a practical use, but sometimes it can be useful if you had complicated handheld shots or complicated movements and you had to do multiple takes of that one type of thing during multiple takes of a music video. Again, it's a very niche concept, but in case you did this, you could look at all of those takes in sequence at the same time and then pick the one that you think was the best version of it. So the way to set that up, instead of looking at all the cameras at once, is I'm going to go ahead right here, open in timeline. And I'm just going to shrink these down so I can see each of them much easier. And so we can just duplicate our multicam sequence twice for each camera that we have. I'm going to go ahead and just rename them as well. So this is going to be camera, just kidding, camera 1. And this will be camera 2, come on, and then camera 3. I know how to type, guys, trust me. So now let's go ahead and make sure each of these are opened up. So I'll right click, open in timeline. And now we have each of our cameras here. Let's go ahead and make sure our link selection is on so that when we highlight the video, it highlights the audio as well. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of camera 2 and 3 that I see here. So I'm going to go into the camera tab 2, delete all of camera 1, and then delete all of camera 3. And it helps to have your clips labeled too so that you know which ones you're deleting. These are different cameras as well, so it's easy to see when they have different naming conventions. So we'll go ahead and delete unused angles here as well. And then we delete all of camera 1 and 2. And then once we delete all those unused angles, now we have 3 different instances of 3 different cameras. So now I can go back to our regular timeline, drag camera 2 down, drag camera 3 down. And now if I set my multicam on, make sure I change that to 2x2 because we don't need to see that many. Now we can see the full takes of each of our cameras in all of their full take glory. And again, in this particular instance, this wouldn't really be that useful. What you could do after this though is once you get all your cuts together, you could stack your cameras on top of each other and then recut them again with the proper takes that you have. But the more practical way that I find in most of my scenarios is actually just by going by take. So we're going to go ahead and delete all of these, and then we're going to go ahead and select all of our stuff. We're actually not going to go back to the sync thing. We're just going to bring these in as is. So I'm going to put these on layer 1. I'm going to go ahead and click these and highlight these first 3, put these on layer 2. And then I'm going to go to the last one, select the first 3, put these on layer 3, and I'm going to highlight them, move them away so that they're separated. And then I just have to bring the audio in. So let me go ahead and bring the music in. I need the music to be on the first layer. So now I'm going to use that shortcut to lock all of my video tracks here. And then I'm going to highlight all the audio, press Alt down, and that'll bring all of my audio down one layer. And then sometimes this can happen too. So this is good to know. I don't want this to be a mono track because it's a stereo file. So I can right click, change track type to stereo. And that's going to fix our music so it can play back properly. And then for each instance, I'm going to Alt click and drag so that I can make duplicates of this song. And now we can go ahead and just unlock our video tracks again. And then we can use that select everything under the playhead shortcut. So I'm going to use that here. And then I can use my based on waveform shortcut. Then it auto syncs them. So select all, sync, and select all and sync. And now they're all synced up. So before we make these into multicam clips, we actually need to move this timeline into the master bin instead of audio because it shouldn't be there. So let's move it to the master. Click on master, make sure master is highlighted. Now we can highlight the video tracks, right click, select new compound clip, and then we can just name this take 1. Do the same thing here, name it take 2, highlight all of these, compound clip, take 3. And then simple, easy solution, highlight all of these in the media pool that we just made. And then we can just right click and hit convert compound clip to multicam clip. And boom, we have 3 multicam clips just like that. Now going back to that frame rate issue, because the Panasonic had a 60 FPS shot and the other 2 were 24. The first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and right click on our Panasonic shot and let's go to find media pool so that we can just go directly to them. So we see we have our 60 FPS. Let's remember this value. So let's go to clip attributes and change our video frame rate to 23.976 because that's what the other ones were set to. It's automatically going to change it inside of the timeline, but then we can just right click, hit change clip speed, and then we can change it to the exact frames per second that it was originally shot in, which is 59.94. Now on the surface, this isn't going to appear to do anything, but if we go to our inspector under retime and scaling, if we bring retime process down, we can select optical flow. And motion estimation, we can either do enhance better or speed warp. I'm going to do enhance better because it loads faster. And speed warp is studio only. But now if we go to a point here where we can see a decent amount of movement, this is a static shot, so typically this wouldn't be too much of an issue. But we can turn optical flow on and off, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this and turn off proxies so it's a little bit easier to see, you can see that we're actually getting different frames. So if I turn this off, you can see where it kind of jumps every few frames. If I turn retime and scaling on, you'll see it's actually creating new frames, so it actually looks like it was shot in 24 frames per second and moves a bit smoother with what the motion should be. Now, if you wanted to set it to speed warp to get the better motion estimation, you can certainly do that, and there's ways that we can actually get it to play back a little bit faster, because natively it's probably not going to play back that fast. So let me scroll out here. Let's say you wanted to keep the speed warp effect. What we can do is actually right click and then go to render in place. And then I would do something like DNxHR SQ or HQ, something that has like a decent amount of higher fidelity while also being able to play back at normal speeds as well. So we can go ahead and we would normally render this. I'm not going to render it right now, but that's what you would do if you wanted to keep that. Plus it'd be easier to get real-time playback and see if it actually works. One last little tidbit on working with multicam clips. I'm just going to go ahead and just remake this real quick. Hit multicam. If we go inside of our multicam clip, something in the Fairlight page that's often not known about is if we wanted to do audio effects on the track level, we can't actually save those. So I'm just going to throw a multi-band compressor on here. And so let's say I put it on the track level and we can see that it was added right here. What I'm going to do is just go back to the edit page and then switch timeline back, forth, go back to the Fairlight page. That effect is gone. But if I put it on the clip level and go back to the edit page, go to switch timeline back, the effect is still there. So that's the only thing I found doesn't actually save on a multicam clip. When you do color inside of a multicam clip, that will save just fine and is actually a preferred way to do it, so you don't have to do color correction on every single instance of your clip that you've cut. You can just make a change on the multicam clip level, and then that applies it for every single instance of that multicam in the regular timeline. There was a lot to cover on multicam clips, and there's still probably a lot more that I could cover, especially if cameras have no audio. Obviously you have to manually sync it, and there are techniques to be able to do that. If you want me to tackle more of this stuff, or if you have any questions on multicam setups, please let me know in the comments. And if you see me live on either of these channels on Twitch, you can definitely ask me questions there live as well, and I'd love to interact with you and answer any questions you may have. But right now, I need to go to sleep, and you know what I do for that? I take cutscene, because that is the 100% natural way to go to sleep. Link in the description. Hashtag not sponsored. Who does this? Does anybody actually do this anymore? When they say like hashtag not sponsored or whatever? I'm not sponsored, just making that clear. Oh yeah, by the way, that video on proxies is right here. The thing I was mentioning earlier. Go watch that if you want to learn more about how to make your proxies actually work better for you. Right here. Watch. Press that video. I'm signing out. What are you waiting for? Click it!